Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture. Hey, everybody. It is
Hello.
mid-August. It doesn't matter. It's August in general.
It's
Somewhere
one of
in
these
August.
days.
Which
Yeah.
is the perfect segue into what we're talking about today, which is a farmer burnout, gardener burnout, plant growing burnout in general. And August is just always in my opinion, the most timely time to start talking about farmer burnout or outside burnout. I don't even know.
What makes it timely?
Because if you know a farmer
Japanese
or
beetles.
a market gardener or someone who's invested a lot of time and energy into their outside activities, you you may notice they're all kind of saying the same thing, and it's something along the lines of, "I'm real tired." Whenever you speak to them,
Right. Is this year gonna start wrapping up?
Is it cold yet? Like,
Right.
and I laugh to disguise the bags underneath my eyes, but I think that's pretty universal, at least with a lot of the farmers that I talk to. No matter what they seem to grow, what is your all's experience with this time of year?
Here in Kentucky, we have seasonality. We have the 4 seasons. I often wonder about those locations like far south that may not have the
Oof.
seasonality that we do as far as weather, so they don't have the same limitations on production. So what if they
Right.
do produce mostly year round? I mean, here we are. We've already kicked it off by saying, thank goodness, the changing of the seasons brings a change in, attitudes. What about those people that can't get that?
Right.
How do they find
No.
relief?
No, that reminds me. I mean, as a former farm worker of the Deep South,
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the things when I moved up here and I saw this focus on season extension. I was like, "No, don't do it. Like that's what happens to us down there. And
It's
why
a
would
lie.
anyone extend their season any longer?"
Someone was joking and said, "You guys are putting in all of these high tunnels. You know that means you have to work longer into the winter, right?" You're always working, doing things, but longer production cycles,
Yeah.
which is good, in a way, but in another way, maybe a break is not
Yeah.
so bad. Do we always have to be doing something?
Well, I mean, more the serious kind of answer of how they deal with that in the like kind of Florida and Georgia is I know a lot of people kind of stage down their production in the summertime and things are
Yeah.
kind of more focused on the shoulder season.
Yeah, I was recently in Charleston, and it was hot,
Famously hot.
famously hot and humid. Their player scores for humidity was 99, heat 98 across the board.
No, thanks.
And this was toward the end of July, and we got there, and most of the farms didn't have anything in the field because they shoot to have everything out by the end of July, which is a very foreign concept to us. Yeah, it makes me wonder if there's with the seasonality, there's a sense of we got to cram as much as we can between March and September, and so we're gonna go, and that maybe even makes it a little bit worse because I can rest in the winter is humans generally do better with regular rest as opposed to biannual rest.
Occasional rest every now and again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
on an ongoing basis.
I feel that in my soul. That kind of, you've only got a limited season, so you have to crank out a lot more to kind of fill that void that the winter brings, and, income or whatever it is. That's because you're usually, I know a lot of our vegetable producers can be, harvesting kale and spinach and stuff like that probably 10 months out of the year, maybe more if they're doing a little bit of heating. So there may be less pressure in the summer months because they're still making some income. But I think for a lot of growers who are not doing winter, that they're still producing in winter, but they're not maybe harvesting and bringing in income in the winter. There's a big push to really go because you've got to fill that void, right? You have to make enough money in these few amount of months to last you 12 months. And I think that's can be tough.
Yeah, and so that's one of the components of the season extension and value added and other off-season income streams that's attractive. However, as Josh said, in my experience, it's not let's reduce my experience with a lot of people who add season extension is they don't really know or think or maybe can't afford or whatever to reduce their intensity during the main growing season.
Mm-hmm.
They just can try to keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do 10 miles today instead of 5. Well, I'm gonna run my 5-mile pace for 10 miles and see how it goes. And then many of them do end up. You'll see people that focus on shoulder seasons, or they'll eventually move away from that. I think one thing I just wanted to, we talk about stress. Stress is a concept, and stress is kind of always there in everyone's lives, or opportunities for it. But burnout itself, so I just checked it out with the American Psychology Association's Dictionary of Psychology. So they refer to burnout, and they define it as a physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion accompanied by decreased motivation, lowered performance, and negative attitudes toward oneself and others. And I think, one of the components of burnout that sometimes gets overlooked or doesn't really get talked about is that, like, there is a decrease in performance too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, and so just saying, I'm just going to deal with it, I'm going to tough it out, I'm going to whatever. Well, you're going to be operating with, one or maybe both of your arms tied behind your back the longer you push it. And so that's just just a little bit of a framing of the difference between occasional stress and that burnout is like this place you arrived at.
That's usually one of the first things I want to know, Brett, when I'm, we're very blessed, an extension to a lot of times we're working with people out in communities is try to get a sense of whether this is an episodic instance of stress, or is it something because of operational setups or guidelines or the way people do things? Is it something that's going to be a continuous stressor?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of it. If it's something that's just continuous because the way you're set up, like for instance, you don't have enough labor, and you just simply have too much to do and not enough hours to do it, that's going to be continuous until you address that. And that really worries me. If it's just a rainstorm that gets sand all over your lettuce, or your hay baler breaks down, that's episodic. That those things are going to happen. But if it's something that's just going to be there in the background and just wear you down, that's one of the first things I try to understand when I'm listening to people and hearing people is, well, what's the nature of the stress? And it just makes me wonder, and it made me think about that when you mentioned what burnout really is. And it seems like just this, you get to this point.
Yeah.
I feel like sand on your lettuce could be like a really folksy term for like just something bad that happens, but it's not the end.
That's a Florida phrase. We use that all the time. You
Just
got
a little
sand on my lettuce.
Yeah. I feel like it's like a burn for somebody. Man, you're worse than sand on my lettuce. Unfortunately, most of the populace is not going to get that reference. They're going to be like, what?
How do we expand that? Like, don't let a little sand on your lettuce ruin the whole salad or something.
Ruin the whole taco.
Ruin the whole taco.
Yeah.
Salad, what is that?
A little sand on the lettuce.
I was thinking about that, Brad. I was glad somebody vocalized that. I'm glad somebody put that to song. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And a classic song at that. Very well played.
I think that, I don't know, my thought process when we were discussing, topics, and this one came up, was that I always feel better when I talk to other farmers or growers or someone who's in a similar situation as me, and there's just a little bit of camaraderie there about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my goal is that you listening will feel a little bit like you're not alone out there, and just the stress, the burnout, just kind of that feeling of being overwhelmed this time of year. I always try and think of August as like almost a transitional period. I mean, we're starting to lose daylight. Our nights, we're going to have plenty of hot days still, but usually our nights, we start getting a little bit cooler nights.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you've got really bad weed problems, they're probably at their peak, but it's sort of the time to transition into something else. So whether that's your fall garden, your fall crops, it's almost, for me and the way I do things, and I think a lot of people do, are it's almost, it's not quite a clean blank slate like you get in this, the middle of winter when you're starting out and you're wanting to start your seeds, but it's second best. It's sort of like the chalkboard that you've erased
Changing
lightly
of the
and you still
guard.
have you still have all the like white dust on
Yeah.
it, but like you don't necessarily see what was written. That's kind of how I think about August, and giving myself a little bit of time to accept what has not gone well this
Mhm.
year and change it, make some notes to myself about what didn't go right. And that way, I don't necessarily try and solve the problem. Sometimes you can in the moment, but sometimes you just need to write down that this bed had horrible weed problems and I don't know why, but write it down. And then
Mhm.
in January, look at it again and say, okay, I had this problem. Now, how do I fix it once you've had a little bit of time? Maybe you get through the holidays, you got some good, couple extra pounds worth of delicious food on you, and you're just feeling better.
You're
And
a next
more
year.
Navigated
You're
the notoriously low stress holidays.
yeah,
notoriously low
yeah.
stress.
I think farmers are next year people. That's what you're describing,
Mhm.
Alexis.
Yeah.
And Colin Hay put it to words. It's a song like I think it's actually called Next Year People, but it's a song about farmers being eternal optimists. No matter
Mhm.
what's going on this year, they have optimism for the future. They're next year people. Farmers are next year people.
Yeah, and something Alexis brought up there about, writing things down, the journaling aspect of it. That for me touches on something that has helped me a lot in times past, even not necessarily connected to farming directly, but like I find that when I write things down, whether it's like journaling about how something went and accepting it, or when it comes to things that I need to do later or to touch on and
Mhm.
reflect on later, that writing things down lets me kind of let it go. Like I no
Mhm.
longer have to kind of keep it
In my
somewhere
brain.
stuck in my memory bothering me. I can just let it go and know that later I will look at this and, deal
Deal
with
with
it
it.
or accomplish it. But that, writing things down, that sort of thing is kind of critical or has been crucial for me in managing stress.
I've worked with producers, and it's hit them a different way. Journaling has, and it was unexpected to me when they told. And when this is more than one instance, but it was a form of journaling. But they began writing things down, however they called it, keeping. I think they wanted to be, they were like, "We're keeping a log," but to me, I was like, "They're journaling."
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what it made them do is take stock of their time and what they spent their time on. And they just realized some time inefficiencies or
Mhm.
some choke points that was causing them a tremendous amount of stress. I guess
Mhm.
long story made short was that journaling or keeping a log helped them kind of compartmentalize where there were issues and realize a few things about their balance of things and their operation and with their family. And it all
Yeah.
came about because of that journal, that
Yeah.
writing things down and reflecting on that. And it was a very powerful process
Yeah.
for a few producers that I've worked with, and they were just basically journaling, and they didn't expect that. And I mean, I was like, wow, that's must be a great way to realize some things when you take stock of it like that and
Well,
step
yeah,
back and look at it.
it gives you that kind of time break, which is another sort of way to mitigate stress and burnout is to kind of disconnect from what you're doing and take a
And the
break.
disconnect's a
Yeah,
whole nother
yeah,
thing with farming, isn't it? I
yeah.
Mhm.
mean,
But
that's a
with
big
What
the
are
thing there.
boundaries? What are those?
Ooh, a good word,
right.
Alexis. I like it. Yeah, I hear that a lot. That disconnect. Well, how do you do that if you're on a let's say a family production or family farm operation? I have heard that, in me being in this situation in the past myself, it's hard to find that disconnect and get away from the stress because the stress lives with you and it's part of you
Mhm.
in a lot of cases.
I think something I've seen is that people will actually just they'll schedule it, and that may not be a perfect fix, but somebody will have a like phone free Sunday or Saturday afternoon
Mhm.
or whatever it may be, or screen free, that they're not going to be thinking about that and stressing about that.
Mhm.
But I think something too that I've been trying to just wrap my head around more generally, or and work it into my life more, I guess, is that people are very different. People have very different ways of handling things, and so for some people, journaling would be a great thing. It would be very
Mhm.
helpful for them. some people, the journaling would be a way of laying out all the things that they're stressed about, and it would just make them more stressed to see it all laid out. Or maybe they're already keeping all these records and they have everything
Mm-hmm.
lined out. And I think, it could be, I think those are great tips for some people, but if that doesn't fit you, it could be that you need to go out in the woods and just scream at the top of your lungs and just kind of let it out. Or Josh, have you ever cried in the field while you were in
Oh,
the
all
middle?
the time. That's one of the nice things about heat is like it looks like sweat, and nobody
Yeah.
can tell
I
you're
mean,
just
it's
bawling
basically
your
just
eyes
sweat
out.
from your eyes.
It's just sweat
Right.
from her. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a thing too, is that I think sometimes we cause ourselves as much issue by kind of trying to hold everything together and not letting it out, or letting yourself
Mm-hmm.
feel it, or letting yourself you don't come across that you have everything together, and we talked about the Instagram pressures of the perfect
Yeah, the highlight reel.
picture perfect, polished, everything's great, all the weeds and all the problems are just out of frame. I think sometimes people will do that, especially in the direct marketing world, or in the, if you have to be on and interacting with people. So that's another aspect of it, I think, is that you got to figure out something that's going to work best for you. You leave it behind on the page. Maybe somebody else leaves it behind with eye sweat in
Mhm.
the field. Somebody else leaves it alone in the echoing through the trees that they go and do, or whatever the thing may be.
Yeah,
Listen.
I have worked with multiple people that their strategy for kind of disconnecting and establishing boundaries had to involve them getting so geographically distant from the
Mm-hmm.
farm that they couldn't possibly be in a
Mm-hmm.
position to help anything.
Yeah.
And then that was, and not necessarily from their workers reaching out to them, but that was like the only way to get them to like go away and
It's a
not think about the
definition of a
farm.
vacation. Yeah. And it's a new concept to some folks that, have farmed actually to take a vacation. But the critical word there you said is vacation away, or a
Right.
break away. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind
where
of
they
makes
can't
sense.
just, look out the window and reinvite all the stress right back in.
Well, and that's that boundary that one of the greatest things about it that I remember is, living and working there with family and long days and doing things together and always being together. And that's always and sometimes that's some of the most challenging things, especially when, you're working with all these biological systems and weather
Hmm.
goes wrong, and you're working not only with biological systems but mechanical systems that can sometimes be dangerous. And you combine all these unknowns, and that's its own stressor. And with 104-degree August day, Alexis, with family out in a field with everybody sweating from their eyes, it can be challenging, it can be trying. And I remember mom one time just telling dad, it's okay not to be okay. We had one of
Hmm.
those moments where everybody was stressed, and, it was going to rain. The hay was on the ground, and, tobacco, which, was a very important cash crop for us at the time. Just everything was literally a perfect storm, figuratively and literally. But, I remember that was a turning point for us. She was like, it's okay not to be okay sometimes.
Yeah.
I have one of my goals for 2023 from a farming perspective was that I gave myself time off every week.
Weird.
So, right, it's not,
Weirdo.
I'm not great
Who
at
are
it.
you?
I'm not great at it,
Sunday
but
is not fun day, Alexis.
it was, even when I don't succeed at that goal, when I do succeed, number one, I hit a goal, and I love
Hmm.
that, gives my brain some serotonin. But also, it's like I've given myself permission because I did set that goal ahead of time,
Hmm.
and I've given myself a little permission. So that was one of my things where I give myself. I wanted to give myself an entire day. I've gotten down to half a day. So for those of you who are struggling with that, give yourself permission to refill your cup a little bit, and because you can't pour from an empty one. But I have a friend who, she always puts things in perspective. She was a nurse in a ICU unit with, well, she was with babies in the NICU, and she now farms full time. And she said at some point, she just says, you know what, it's just flowers. And as someone who, and that's, I mean, her and her husband both are full-time farmers. Like, if they don't sell these flowers, that's their only income. But coming from a place where she was literally dealing with like infants that could potentially be dying around her, and she just kind of said, it's only flowers, or, okay, so it's only vegetables. And even if you are a full-time farmer and it's only, how bad can it actually be? And I kind of think about that when I'm outside and I'm like, the rain's coming and I'm like, I have a choice of saying I can either harvest this crop or I can take the time off that I need. And so I kind of go through a little checklist in my mind of like, if I don't harvest this crop and the rain's coming or whatever's going to happen, is it going to get ruined? Is it completely destroyed? So, yes or no. It's like a little flow chart in my brain. And then sometimes it just comes down to, yeah, it might be ruined. Yeah, I might lose some money, but what's the opportunity cost of me not having that time off? Will I feel better if I go inside and just fold some laundry or just like sit there and stare at something?
Take a nap.
Take a nap.
Folding the laundry doesn't sound like taking a break for me. I'm going to go on record by saying that.
Well, I like sit there and just watch TV and fold laundry and
make a flower bed. I was so proud of you. You posted. You actually did some flowers for yourself.
Next to a laundry
process,
bin while TV is on.
Listen. All right, it's really hard for me to just sit and do nothing. I have to feel like I'm accomplishing something. That's why I started crocheting. Remember my temperature blanket? Because I'm like feeling like I'm accomplishing something.
That's bringing your temperature down.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my version this past weekend, I gave myself permission to like give myself something that wasn't like on Amazon, like just do something for myself. And what did I do? But I built this huge garden bed and laid bricks.
Physically very demanding.
Like, I was all day, driving the tractor, dumping stuff. Like it was a mess, but it brought me so much joy. And now I get to just look out my window with my coffee or sit outside and see something I did for myself that's no longer on my to-do list that will bring me joy for a long time. So, if you're not that, so I kind of hate that self-love thing, because there's this idea that it has to be like, oh, you're doing yoga, or stretch, take care of your body, that kind of stuff. But that's not who I am. I'm going to meditate by digging out some weeds or moving some compost around. And it's okay
being violently physical.
To be a little bit violent as part of your meditation. Okay. So, take care of your body. But if your version of stress relief and combating burnout is more physical labor, like, that's okay. I think, I don't know. That's my opinion.
I think in general too, grasping around at, am I doing burnout prevention correctly? Am I doing self-care right? And then looking around and comparing yourself is not a good approach. And it could be that someday, maybe someday you realize or you feel that meditation has become the thing that you want to do. And maybe right now you feel that going out and doing something that's a little bit different and is not so, mental, because it could very well be that you're not as physically tired as you are mentally tired. Right. And so you are taking a break from the mental portion of the business.
Yeah.
And, but you enjoy being active. And so you want to do this thing that's this other thing. Yeah. I think self-care could take all sorts of forms. And I think it's important that we check in with ourselves to see, am I just finding a way to continue being productive while saying it's self-care? or am I really an active person who loves doing that? And this really does feel like a break, and I do feel recharged, or I do feel rested, or, and I'm getting what I need, right? Sometimes when I feel down, it's because I'm sad. Sometimes it's because I haven't eaten. Sometimes it's because I need to drink some water. Sometimes it's because I haven't seen you three in a while. And so sometimes there's different answers to a similar looking problem. And yeah, in general, I think,
it can change.
If you want to build a garden bed, great. If you would like for me and Josh to do a pro seminar on how to do nothing, we're advanced in our field.
Listen,
I've got the reference sheet on that.
I got some expertise that goes back years.
The week of Christmas. So an extension, we're off kind of that week between Christmas and New Year's. For those of you who don't know, like, don't call us. We're not going to answer. But it's like the only time we won't answer. I make myself this huge charcuterie board, and
Nice.
I veg. I don't do anything. I just sit on the couch for at least an entire day. It used to be that I would clean my house the day before, and then I would do that. But now I hired a house cleaner, so she comes the day before.
Tyler doesn't count, Alexis. Okay.
Tyler. Tyler still has to go to work, so he goes to work. I make a huge charcuterie board
Do
of
you
just
call
like
it vegging
girl
with
dinner?
meat and cheese? Oh,
No, I call it girl dinner.
I see.
Have you guys heard
Girl
about girl
dinner.
dinner?
I've heard of
Yeah,
girl
I've seen
dinner.
the phenomenon.
It's
I've heard of girl dinner.
Like,
I eat dinner.
girl
all
dinner
kinds
is my
of dinner.
Like, I
My
live
horse-
for girl dinner.
My horoscope. I saw a reel of girl dinner by horoscope.
Oh yeah,
and mine was drip coffee and a blunt.
so was mine. Well, we're both
Yeah.
Virgos.
I was like, I
You're
mean,
the same astrological cycle.
Annie's my wife's was vaping in your favorite flavor of chip.
That's quite an amalgam.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, folks. I was hoping you were going to say you took that whole week and just ate on the charcuterie board,
Well,
but day is okay.
Yeah, well,
That is
I'm
okay.
still covering and uncovering high tunnels and low tunnels stuff at that point. So, but I have a few tips that I've written down, and I don't mean to dominate this conversation, but as someone who
But I will.
Is this meat and
I
cheese
will
tray tips, or
yeah,
what is this?
well,
What is
listen,
this?
Don't
those
intend
are
on resting during this podcast.
those are our December
Listen.
podcast.
No
topics.
dead air on
Listen.
this podcast.
As someone whose goal was to try and set some more boundaries, live on my farm, I work full time. And farm pretty hard. So a couple things that I've done: set away messages for whatever time you take, whether it's Wednesday afternoon, Sunday morning, whatever that time is. Especially for those of us in like retail sales, I think we get a lot of like social media messages, email messages, wholesale as well, but there's just a lot going on. So I always felt guilty about not responding of just to people, and it also affects the algorithm, unfortunately, on if you're not responding very quickly to people, and as you post things, people don't see them. So anyway, so what you can do is go in and set away messages, and so mine just says something simple like, thanks for contacting us. We're off duty right now. We'll get back to you tomorrow, or whatever timeline that is that you want to set. And I just set for every, Sunday, all day, or whatever those timeline is. And number one, I think people appreciate that. And I think it makes sure people know that you've got their message, but also that it pleases the algorithm. That I hate that I have to say that, but facts are the facts.
We are all slaves to the algorithm.
I think it's important that your customers know that you take some time to yourself, and that it's for some reason, I don't know, it just seems like a good conversation to have with them without you actually having a conversation. And like sometimes I'm out in the field and it's a quick question because it's just like a friend who said she liked to post, and I can message back that I saw it, or thanks. But there's a lot of relief there that I don't have to pick my phone up and do something or get on the computer. And so highly recommend doing that. The other one that I've done and need to do is, if it's bothering you, if it's causing you stress to see out in the field, I'm using like, if your crop has failed, if the weeds have taken over, whatever it is, and every time you look at it, you cringe and it follows you around, because I'm that person who like wakes up in the middle of the night thinking of the bed that's overrun with crabgrass right now. Chop it down. Just chop it down. Put a cover crop down. And because once it's gone and you're not constantly looking at what you may consider a failure, it's not staring, your failures aren't staring you in the face anymore, and you're at least doing something productive, like growing a cover crop.
Bury
Maybe put
your
a
dead
silage
deep is what
tarp.
I'm hearing.
Huh? Bury your
said
dead
you-
deep. Yes.
Yeah.
Put a silage tarp over top of it and heat that baby up,
Okay, that's one step more, but yeah.
So I think that that's something that I've like been encouraging myself to do is if it's really that bad, sometimes you can it's easier to just get rid of it so that you can prep it for the next bed. So what that you didn't get it harvested.
The line is to destroy your shame beyond the power of memory to recall its existence.
Why do you all put things that I say in such
Into
terms that are
perspective.
very
Oh,
true
yeah,
and
terms,
factual?
yes.
Damn.
Not perspective terms, yeah.
I just wanted to reflect your intensity.
Yeah. We just wanted
Everyone
to
knows by now the intensity that I
all
come
I
with
heard
on this
was try to
podcast.
get away from the stressors. That's all I heard in
Yeah,
summary.
get away from them.
I do just want to keep emphasizing again. So Alexis is an amazing dynamo of a person with
Thank
more energy in 1 week than I have had in my entire life, I think.
Lies.
And so if you've been taking a full day off and you're like, holy moly, I need to get on Alexis's level, that's not what we're getting at here.
No, please
No.
don't. For the love of God.
In some ways, you are further down the path than she is in terms of maybe
Yes.
taking care of yourself,
Trying to get
all
to
those
your
kinds
level.
of things. And so she's just sharing her experience. None of the exact, like when I talk about examples of prices and how much money you can make off of this or that as just an example, how raising your price is going to affect your bottom line. I always say, don't use this exact price. Take the principles of what's being said. The same thing here. You know, it's just the principles. I just know there's a lot of folks who are drawn to this type of work who are so talented, but also often so insecure. And they're, look for the wisdom. If it's making you feel stressed out, maybe just shut this down and go do something else.
Yeah, no,
but,
please. I'm
but hopefully
sorry,
you're
I
feeling
don't.
supported. And no, it's nothing that you're doing. You're just being the amazing person that you are. I'm just aware of how things can be received sometimes, and how I've been received in my life when, you know, that I do a lot of different stuff, and sometimes people will end up saying, oh, it just makes me feel bad that you do all this stuff and I don't do this stuff. And it's like, well, I also take naps and
right,
all kinds of other things. Watch hours of YouTube about the dumbest things you can imagine. I've seen most of the Fast and the Furious movies for at least the second or third time recently. So
nice.
Within the last 3 days.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, it's okay. It's cool to chill some and to but we're mainly saying this, I think, just to take care of yourself. And here's some tips from someone who's really working on that. And I'm really proud of you, Alexis, for the work that you have done, because I know it doesn't come easy to you to do.
Oh
that.
no, it's a struggle. It's such a struggle. Ray, you said something earlier that I would like for you to re-say. Something your dad told you one time about farming. Do you remember what you said?
The sand and the lettuce.
Yeah. Which instance? Yeah, Dad was always saying something. I didn't always listen.
Farming, before we got started, farming is like a crime of passion.
Yeah.
And I was like, that hit me.
Yeah, and he just because I guess he was getting at that we wrap ourselves up in that. Sometimes it's not just a job; it's a way of life, and sometimes our identities get wrapped up into work, and that becomes a kind of a tangled web. And I think that's what he was getting at, and that's a tough position to be in, because what does that mean? That if you start a small business farming operation, you know, most small businesses, 7 out of 10 historically, of any kind of small business, fail within 5 years. And farming falls right along that. But what does that mean when your identity is tied to the operation? I think that hits a little harder. It can, because if you're doing something that you love, and if you can't do something that you love and make a productive go at it, and that's where all the issues come from, I think. And I think that's just magnified from the people that I've worked with, and even in our own family when we were all farming together. That's magnified when it's multi-generational, and you know, you have this feeling that you have people depending on you, and you cannot fail. But sometimes we just have to realize, like any job, but especially in farming and production, there's just certain factors that are beyond your control.
Nature.
And that's really hard to step back and ask the question why. Dad was always also very good at, besides just throwing out profound tidbits that none of us really understood at the time, we were reflecting on 30 years later, but he always asked that, you know, he would just abbreviate like a heated conversation with, well, why are we doing this? If he, you know, and it was tough. Sometimes you have to ask that, and it's hard to get to why. It really is. Why are you doing this if it's, causing you stress? And,
Mm-hmm.
at some point we all got off the farm. A big factor was we had a big family meeting. My older brother and I, he's 1 year older, we both went away to college. In this case, we both went to Berea at the same time, first in our family to ever go to college, but it was a big deal for our family. And that took a large chunk of the farm labor away.
Hmm.
And so we decided to get off the farm at that time. But we had all of these discussions that we've had today, maybe minus the aliens and Earl Grey tea. I don't know. But we had all these discussions in one family sitting when we made that decision. And it's tough. And because our identities were kind of wrapped up in what we were doing. It was a tough situation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Something just to supplement a little bit of that, about the note about survival rates of businesses and farming enterprises. There was this work that was done by AMS, USDA, Ag Marketing Service. It's been a little over 10 years ago now, so I'm sure maybe there's been stuff since. But one of the things that stuck with me, it was focused on like kind of this segment that we tend to work with, so smaller farms, local food, general kind of vibe. And they found generally a correlation between survivability beyond the first 5 years and rate of growth. And specifically, the more slowly and intentionally the farm and the enterprise grew, the more likely it was to be successful in this type of field. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. And it's, I'm not suggesting that it was because they grew too big and got burnt out and collapsed, right? I think that there's aspects of taking on debt and assumptions about market growth and limitations of, personnel and expanding and management and all these other things, right? But I do think there's a little bit of if you're feeling the pressure to double production and double sales a year after year after year, there's both a personal limit to that, and there's also maybe some other kind of external data about business survivability there on what sustainability is within these types of farms. And of course, there's the same thing too. If you completely stand still, and you aren't changing, or you're not growing, and all that kind of stuff, then that has its own challenges too. But I think that it's a really delicate balancing act.
I like to think of that like from year to year of like what drains you and then what fills you, like and
Yeah.
so if you could, how do you get rid of things that maybe drain you? If
Why are
picking
you looking at me?
tomatoes
No.
Ray drains me.
Mosquitoes and Ray, those are the things that
Mosquitoes.
drain me.
Same classification.
If summertime, picking tomatoes in a high tunnel in the summer drains you, can you produce a little bit more lettuce or kale in the wintertime to fill that gap? Looking at it that way. And that's where like I take notes. Like I wouldn't like I take logs. I don't journal. I take logs. But that's the kind of thing,
Depends
that
on your personality.
I don't
that-
dance. I make money moves.
I make
That's
money.
right.
Move. So think about that. I think would
Something that
be
goes right along
valuable.
with that, and it was once again at a national meeting, and there was a presentation. I was trying to look it up in notes that kind of related to today's discussion, and for the economist here on the podcast today might find this interesting, but I just thought in my head that profitability would be one of the prime indicators of farm success beyond 5 years.
Mhm.
It was not. Profitability was not the key indicator of continuing beyond 5 and 8 years. And I thought that makes no sense. If you're making money, why would you stop?
Mhm.
But it's dissatisfaction while you are making, gainful means, while you're making money, even if you're profitable, but you're miserable, you may get out of it. And there's all these other cool factors that, and I'll have to find this study. I don't know how, the scope of the study, but it looked at other factors like, does the producer attend meetings where they can get social support from other circles? We've touched on that 2 or 3 times. That was a big indicator of whether or not you were going to keep farming. Your social support and family
Find your
support.
tribe.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't profitability, and that blew me out of the water. As a producer, you're producing things and you're doing a good job and making money, but yet that's not the defining factor of why you stay in the business. Interesting. It was interesting to me. Kind of tied in what you were saying, Alexis. Yeah.
And Alexis, were you gonna don't dance make money moves was supposed to be just a background little goof while you continued on with the
No, you're fine.
draining versus
Brett was really dancing.
filling. Yeah, well,
Well, like this podcast,
these is bloody shoes, right?
Yeah. Made for dancing.
this
Yeah.
podcast, while there's like work and we do research behind the scenes and, there's things that we do that takes effort, it's still something that, fills me up, fills my cup. Right.
Mhm.
And so then I can do a better job at other things because I'm, in a better mood or emotionally or whatever that is. So, but I think taking a serious look at, we always say take a serious look at your finances, but take a serious look at how whatever you're doing affects you, emotionally, mentally, but also physically. Sometimes you just can't harvest carrots anymore. Like it just is the way it is. And there's
You'd rather pick happiness.
Yeah, there's certain crops I just hate to harvest. I love to use them in bouquets or whatever. They sell well. Like there's no reason not to grow them other than I hate to harvest them. And that's enough for me. Like they don't inspire me to
Whatever
harvest
your
them.
reason.
And so they just take up space. They don't get
Brett
harvested.
said that earlier. Whatever your personal reason it is, that's good enough. If
So
it's your personal reason.
I think what we're talking about are some different ways to combat burnout. So, that's one way, is just to at some point sit down, whether it's today or in the winter, and figure out how you can take some of that off of your plate so you don't feel as burned out. But be aware that I've never met a farmer who, even if they think they're doing it all right, which they never do, they're always burned out. So if you're still burned out after you made changes next year, it's okay. It's just part of it, right? Like Ray said, you're always next year people. There's always something to improve on. And sometimes what you need to improve on is not just your weed control, but it's your boundary setting, especially when you live where you work.
You guys are touching on so many of my personal mechanisms in life, like the journaling, writing things down, taking stock, or getting with a other group of like-minded people that have similar life experiences so that I can kind of measure myself and, recalibrate myself. But yeah, you guys are touching on a lot of the things, just not necessarily in farming, but just support that I give myself or get from others. You guys are touching on a lot of those things.
I remember, this is just a very brief, I remember a very brief side note. I remember in periods like that, especially when it's very hot and just, intense,
Miserable.
and the weed and the disease and insect pressure are like at their peak. It's just like everything is coming at you. The times where I would kind of stand up and get a head rush, like while working out in the field, or like these moments of intense like clarity and kind of like out of body. And I remember thinking,
can smell the sunshine.
This might not be a good thing.
Yeah.
It could be heat stroke, Brett.
Yeah. I could be dying.
Yeah. If this is heat stroke, I don't want to be right.
Yeah, I don't want to sit in the shade if this is heat stroke. Yeah.
Another thing, Alexis, you said to me, I think last year, was I was asking you if you did any growing of flowers throughout the season. I was trying to figure out, I was getting into a little bit of the flower arranging and was just kind of curious and feeling it out. Mm-hmm. And you said something like you've decided to rest with the trees, was what you said. I thought that was very, very poetic. And
thank you. I'm sure I stole it from someone.
I'm a tree guy, so it hit for me. But I wonder, like, I assume that was the result of some learning about yourself you had to do.
Yeah.
Did you try not to? You tried to go, palm tree year round kind of vibe, and
I'm a burn the candle at both ends person. Like Josh,
mangrove forest.
Let's cut the middle open and see if there's more wick in there.
Are we sure it's dead? Are we sure?
Charcuterie board, Alexis. Think charcuterie board. Back way slowly.
Josh one time told me that he's like, when Alexis goes out, it's going to be like the sun exploding. It's just like just stuck a black hole.
It won't matter what direction you're looking.
It's not a candle so much as it is a bottle rocket.
Know it happened.
That meteor that went over Kentucky, that was Alexis in real life.
Little imprint shadows permanently.
Yes. I think it's been those kinds of comments, along with just aging and not just
Don't
like
talk to me
my
about
body
aging.
doesn't work the same way that it did before, which is a fact, but also that just mentally I have other goals for myself. I'd like to think of myself a little bit wiser, but it just it's not a sustainable pace. And so if we take our cues from nature and farming, it felt very helpful to take my cue from them as far as like resting. Like we have these big mighty oaks, we have all of these beautiful plants, and yes, certainly some are evergreen, but even our evergreens don't do what they do in the summer, right? They just kind of, I'm almost more like an evergreen, right? I'm just kind of hanging, I'm not really growing, but I'm just doing some like
Getting
behind the
wind
scenes
burn.
work to stabilize myself for spring and just chilling. And so resting when the trees rest. Now, I don't know if that's enough rest, I would say, but it was a helpful thought process for me as like a weird plant nerd. So
It's like the crunchy granola mafia's threat is like, you'll be sleeping with the trees tonight.
But you're like, sounds fine to me. What's your threat?
like, is
Where's
there
the
a
threat?
hammock or is this just like an on the ground situation?
Is it as fertilizer?
Well, I believe
hammock was my first thought when you said resting with the trees. I was like,
Oh,
all
yeah.
right, that is a
I have
hammock
one hidden
tagline.
in my backyard in the trees right now, and that's where I'm going later on.
I believe
Nice.
they've determined, and this sounds like a typical setup for one of my bits, so it's not. I believe that they've determined that even deciduous trees continue to photosynthesize slightly through their bark even during winter. Very interesting and wild. Like, we think of it as the big photosynthetic mass, but there's actually this aspect of, so
chloroplast everywhere.
Yes, it's because sleeping
Specialized organelles.
isn't like arrested motion, or resting isn't arrested motion. It's not nothingness, right? It's not it's not freezing. There's something else happening. It's kind of just a different type of activity.
I know. I tell people when I'm taking a nap, I'm busy.
My battery is recharging,
and I'm busy.
I wake up, I'm a little tired.
I'm very busy.
I'm getting things done.
Listen, I had a boss tell me, and I will remember this till the day I stop working.
Man.
Honestly, till the day I die. It's
Impression.
funny. So I'm very aggressive.
That was what he told you? I could have told you that.
Yeah. You didn't take it
I also remember
get that one.
No, they said sometimes, especially in extension where yes people, but in farming in general, we're also, I think, yes people, we're always trying to make a sale, small business, whatever it is. We always want to say yes. And so it's okay to have I've probably said this before, but it's okay to have, when you have your calendar open and you're looking whether or not you can do something for somebody, to put your finger, like physically take your finger and put it on that date in your calendar and just say, I have something on that day. Nice. And like, I won't forget it, because it was the awareness of, yes, I could technically put something that day, or yes, I can technically do something, but how does that affect all of the other things I'm already committed to? Or by not having that time to just either do nothing or plan or whatever that is, and not be what's the word I'm looking for, like responsible for someone else in some way, for doing something for someone else. And man, have I used
yourself for
that.
state of readiness.
Like, you're not lying, you're just putting your finger on the date and saying, I have something on that date. So it's been good. Well, I think that we've probably talked your ear off about this, and I think that the goal was, like I said, from my end, was just to make sure that if you're feeling burnout, that's okay. It's very, very normal. If you're not feeling burnout, that doesn't mean you're doing things wrong. It means you're doing things right. So if you're,
an ideal system would be where the burnout doesn't happen.
Exactly. But knowing what we know about farmers and growers of all sizes, a lot of you are feeling that way. It's okay to feel that way. I'm going to fill you in with another little quote that I use on a regular basis, that probably everyone in this podcast would know who said it, but it is to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And that hits home for me constantly. And I have to remind myself of that. So I hope that works for you guys.
I'd like to just say something too. So if your sense of exhaustion and downness and blues and everything else extends beyond the growing season, and you think maybe there's another problem going on, there's more issues going on, think about reaching out to maybe try to get some help that you need. I know we live in the country with the greatest healthcare system in the world by all metrics, not, but, and so there are challenges sometimes with getting access to those things. But if you're able to, reaching out and talking to someone, whether that be a therapist, a psychologist, a spiritual leader, someone that maybe you trust and can talk to. And if things get really bad, farmer, not to end on a total bummer note, but I was just checking, and so the suicide rate for farmers is 3.5 times as high as it is, 3.5 times that of the general population. And so if you are having those kinds of thoughts or making those types of plans, you can dial 988. That's the suicide and crisis lifeline. But you can also, if you, even in your dark moments, you would hate to be on the phone with somebody, you can also chat with them. They have online chats and text messages and all that kind of fun stuff. That's again 988. So there's all kind. We're talking about the type of burnout that is not evergreen, to go throw back to the trees. It's a thing it's a product of time and exhaustion and not getting a break and all that kind of stuff. But if you think there's something worse than that going on, and I have personal experience with this, it's okay to say, as Ray said that his dad or his mom used to say, that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to look to people who specialize in helping you be more okay and ask for some help with that. So not to end on a total bummer of a note, I will say, okay, so that's a bummer. I'll just share a stupid joke that I was going to say earlier when you were talking about in service to the algorithm. I was going to say, all hail Albert Go Rhythm, first in his name.
Oh my! I knew it. I knew it. You are on standby, and I love it. You are on stand.
was
You're
so
like a
excited,
walking
you guys.
sci-fi reference, Brett. It's so cool. I do like that. I enjoy this crowd.
But yeah, take care of yourself, and we appreciate how difficult it can be to do what you do, and look forward to hopefully a world where it's not so hard to do the cool things and important things that our farmers are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you need farming help, as far as, you don't know what's dying, you need to know what cover crop to put on because you mowed everything down. You just know that your business plan maybe needs some work. That's all stuff that we can help you with in extension as well. So if you're feeling that just burnout right now and you want some help as far as the farming side goes, we'd love to help you there as well. And so you can contact the people on this pod at Hort Culture Podcast at l.uky.edu. You can also find us on Instagram at Hort Culture Pod, and you can message us and check out what's coming up next on there. We'd also love it if you would leave us a review. Let us know what you want to hear more of. Right now, we're just coming up with things from our brains, but we have been getting some feedback, so we really appreciate those of you who have sent that, and we promise you we've got that on deck for you all. But we hope that as we grow this podcast, you will grow with us and join us next week for some more good plant talk.